Life is this constant quest of the chase. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, when you see or hear about people who retire after 40 years in the workplace suddenly deteriorate fast in life, is that they lost the chase. It's a constant quest of learning and figuring things out. And, once we, put it in cruise control or, coast or retire or find no value in the things that we're doing anymore, health declines, finances dwindle, relationships deteriorate, right? So it's just, I don't know, I think that's just what life is.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hey Where'd You Go podcast. I'm Collin Kushner, and we have another fantastic guest. He's a former NFL defensive back, an analyst, a host, a speaker, an author of a brand new book, Pivot to Win, an entrepreneur. He does it all. Please welcome Mr. Jordan Babineaux. What's going on, dude? How are you?
The silent golf clap, right?
With the birds chirping in the background, 100%, dude.
Beautiful, beautiful. What's up, Collin?
Not too much, dude. Again, I'm excited to have you, and I appreciate you taking the time. And like I told you before we started this recording, that introduction could have gone on for a very, 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 very long time. So, pleasure to have you, man. And I always like to start each podcast episode from the very beginning of your life, where you're from. And you're from Port Arthur, Texas. And for those that don't know, Port Arthur is East Texas on the Louisiana border. How would you best describe where you're from?
I like to tell people that Texas is the birthplace of football, right? And people like to think that it's all, country town with horses and oil, but what they don't know is that that's where football originated. I tell them, most people I tell them, and they're like, really? They're like, really? It's like, yeah, man, it's Texas football. But again, there goes a guy from Texas. It's easy to know where a guy's from, right? When you start talking about a guy from Texas, man, proud, and more like that in-your-face personality. Growing up in Port Arthur, surrounded by drug abuse, addictions, violence, economic ruins, living on government assistance. The streets seemed like a faster way to make money. There were just so many negative influences as a young child, in growing up where, had it not have been for, the direction of my mother and other members of the community, and even watching my older siblings, I'm the youngest of five, create this different space mentally to make it out of our environment, it could have easily been a negative outcome for me. And so I like to tell people, our folks down there in Southeast Texas, this is a very resilient group of people, man, having been through storms and having, been through the hurricanes and natural disasters. Our people still standing and they're still fighting. But I would say Port Arthur made me adaptable. In very many environments where I feel like no situation is too big, no conversation is intimidating, and I've had the extraordinary, opportunity to travel the world and meet some very famous people and achieve some really nice things along the way.
I have to ask you this. You said Texas is synonymous with football. Obviously, you said you're the youngest of five. Your older brother, Jonathan Babineaux, also played in the NFL. When did you get introduced to the sport of football?
Man, right out of the birth canal. I had a football rattler waiting on me. They do that to all Texas babies if you're born a boy. So my father passed at the early age. I was 8 years old, and my mom was looking for. She was looking away to kind of fill that gap, right? Here she was, having left to raise five kids by herself. And, and I'll tell you, I'll just fast forward real quick briefly. I mean, we all graduated high school, we all graduated college, and of course, you just mentioned my brother played 12 years with the Atlanta Falcons. And so here we are. My brother and I was 8 years old. He and I are 11 months apart, and we're just tearing things up, running around the store. Probably sneaking snacks in a shopping cart that we can't afford when mom's looking away. Knocking over these cardboard cutouts. They used to have back in the day, sitting in the middle of the aisle. You name it. And this man approached my mom and asked her. Just basically just said, he said, "Man, have you thought about putting your kids in football? They seem to have a lot of energy." And my mom, certainly wasn't aware of, at that time, or even had the understanding of what that meant. And so she decided to take him up on that. I was 8 years old, and here we are registering for Pop Warner football. I mean, really, we couldn't even afford pads. I tell a great story of getting my first helmet. In the book Pivot to Win, I shared a story of getting my first helmet. It wasn't the helmet that I wanted. Certainly, being from Texas, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but if you grew up in Texas, you kind of had a love and passion for a running back named Emmitt Smith who played for the Cowboys. And he had this iconic helmet, man. It was the birdcage face mask, and I wanted that birdcage face mask, but we couldn't afford it. But I ended up playing my first season with a kicker's helmet. That 1 or 2 bar strapped right there across your face mask, man. And I was like, man, if I get hit, I'm gonna crush my face. But 8 years old was when we got started, and it was really this man approaching my mom in the middle of a store, and also dealing with that loss in the family that helped fill the void. And I'll never forget my mom sharing that she saw this joy light up within us. And in playing that sport and being able to release, some of that hurt and pain that, as an 8-year-old, I guess I really didn't know how to deal with or comprehend.
And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you next in terms of being an 8-year-old. You're so young, and the unexpected passing of your dad. Aside from football, how did you navigate those waters, or could you even navigate it? Because again, you're so young, right? It's like, how do you even process that?
From a practical standpoint, I guess, you understand death, right? I mean, I understand that, people don't come back from death, but from an emotional standpoint, very different. To kind of wrap myself around that at a very young age, it was the first time in which, that was our introduction into mortality. But as the youngest of 5, for me, I was a big observer of things, watch my older brothers, watch my mom, watch other people. From that standpoint, I guess dealing with it I really didn't know how to, and I think in looking back at that, as I've had a chance to, now write the book and publish it, I've also grasped these emotions and these big, youth milestones or pivots in my early childhood when I never really had a chance to deal with them, at least not in a healthy way. And so, I would say one of the incredible things and cool things about writing the book was that it gave me a chance to dive deeper into a better understanding of who I am, my emotions, my triggers, what motivates me, relationships, conflict resolution, all of these things that, our environment, our parents, our culture, our community, our education, kind of shapes us to be who we are. But understanding it from a deeper level has gave me more awareness of myself.
Having that deep awareness is so important. And again, as a kid, it's hard to obviously go that far, but as you get older, you learn, and you kind of hit on something, writing it out and actually feeling it. Because I think it's easy to say, at least from my personal experience, I almost came up with like a mantra where it was what I felt like everyone else wanted to hear, but it wasn't how I truly felt. And it's taken a long, long time through writing to really find out, like, wow, like, it's not just such a simple thing. It really hurts, or I'm really angry, or this, that, or the other.
Collin, there's a sense of growth there, right? There's some personal growth and development in understanding what moves you. And your triggers are different than someone else's. I mean, in fact, my triggers are different than my brothers. our motivations, are the things that drives us to achieve the things that we want or the things that we believe that we can accomplish or even that we're deserving of having. I think that's also, one of the greatest enemies as well, is that we have this voice that, in our true self, if we act on it, allows us to do certain things, whatever that is, go after these great and audacious goals that we believe that we can achieve. But then there's also the enemy of the negative self-talk and inner voice that tells us we're not deserving or we can't have this nice house or why would I call to this dream client, and stop us in our very tracks from achieving the things that we want. And so that's a real key point right there. And I just caution people, as we're all experiencing this angst in coming out of this pandemic, is that, well, there's two parts to it. I mean, there's an element of that, the economic disparity between Black and white Americans is growing, is spreading, it's widening, but there's also tremendous new opportunities for so many other things that weren't available to us prior to the pandemic. The best way to describe where we are now is that we've all played the game Monopoly, and it's as if, the Monopoly board has just got shaken up, right? I mean, the dog came by and kicked it over, or you got up and, suddenly the hotels and the cards and the bankers' money is just spilled all over the place. And, you don't know who owns what property or, for that matter, other than where you were on the board. It's like everyone has this new place where they can start if they're looking at, this from a positive lens rather than the viewpoint of a negative position, suggesting or believing that they can't have the things that they want, or they're not deserving of a great life or a great partner or promotion or abundance, right? And so, again, I just caution us where we are to think about this in the position or in the standpoint of, coming out of the pandemic. Yeah, surely the gaps are certainly widening in many ways, in many respects, but there's also new opportunities if we really shift our lens to look at it in a positive way.
How do you get people to shift that lens completely to the positivity side during, whether it be like a pandemic or a massive loss in the family? How do you get people to create that in their mind and to repeat that positivity over and over and over again? Because it's so easy to generate negativity and let that be the mantra that you take.
I mean, there's a few things here, right? One of it happening in its simplest form, I refer to like Earl Nightingale's The Strangest Secret, is that we become what we think about. Really, I mean, like, is that the secret to success? Is it really that simple? Well, let's dive into and understand the mind a little bit more, right? It's that as we have these positive thoughts in our mind, it triggers and embeds different connections in the brain for you to now go seek out how to accomplish that. That's the power of it, right? It's like, but it also works in the same manner if you have a negative thought or limiting beliefs. Is that, well, I don't think that I can, right? Or, I hope things don't go bad for me today. It's like, well, come on. I think it first starts with just your self-talk. Like, how can the world give you what you want or someone else to give you what you want if your own expectation of yourself is that you don't feel like you're deserving of it? And it's a bold and audacious, position to take, but it's powerful. And I also share with you that, along this path of achieving whatever it is that we want, we will be faced with challenges, right? I can promise you that. It's nothing that, something you want. So, like, okay, here we are at the end of quarter one. How many people have set a goal for themselves, and now either through the lack of immediate results, or one late night, or one bad meal, or one negative action towards that has deterred us from achieving what we want, right? And so here we are with this act of persistence and perseverance, right? It's that, okay, well, the persistence portion of what it is that you want just keeps you going to doing something, right? And I can say that in the sense that because having experienced many failures in my own life, I didn't let failure define me. That's important. right? Because even though I failed at something, doesn't make me a failure, right? That would be what is described as a fixed mindset. But when we take those failures and learn from them and apply them into, you know, rechasing that goal, or, you know, kind of find a starting point, right? And I'll say that because, you know, you persist, right, in choosing, you know, your way of life, or, you know, this desired outcome you want for yourself, and getting back up, you know, getting knocked down and getting back up, you'll still have to persevere, right? I mean, I can set this path for myself, or this big goal that I want to achieve, but along the path, I'm going to have to go over obstacles. I'm going to have to find ways to overcome adversity. I'm going to, you know, have to maneuver over and under things that may impede my progress. And so, you know, often marry persistence and perseverance together along this path of goal achievement.
And this is why I love the title of your book and the first word of your book, pivot, because you're constantly, I mean, for you, Jordan, like you had to start making pivots at the age of 8 years old. Unexpected loss of your father, your mom is now in charge of 5 kids, and I know you and Jonathan probably didn't make it easy on her. And you guys,
not at all.
and you had to start pivoting at a young age. And I kind of want to jump back to football real quick. Did you have any expectation that you were going to have the success that you ended up having, or was it just like, you know what, I love playing this game with my brother and I'm just having fun?
The funny thing is that in growing up with siblings, right, there's always that brother competition. And you know, it was like whatever he did, I did. Wherever he went, I went. And whatever he wanted to do, I wanted to do better. You know, I'm the youngest. You know, it's like, man, if I could beat Big Brother, you know how boastful that would feel. But at the same time, you know, what I didn't know, Collin, is that we were developing and creating this desire and passion to win, and this high level of competition that that really set us both on the path of achieving the things that we wanted. And even when we got into the NFL, it was like, okay, well, I got into the league before he did. You know, he ended up getting drafted in the second round the following year. I landed a nice contract. He comes, you know, so we always played this little game of ping pong, you know, of achievement, and still felt like at many levels we were competing against one another. And you know, his team and my team had a chance to play. I was always a fan of my brother. I was a fan of all my siblings. You know, it was my older brother, you know, who made going to college a target. Like, okay, well, that's what you do after high school. You go to college, right? And you know, it was just, again, being the youngest of 5 and watching my siblings, you know, all the things that they did, the things that they accomplished, you know, kind of lay it down for me in the sense that, okay, well, here's the path, here's the expectation. Now it's time to achieve that.
Out of high school, you go to Southern Arkansas, good old Magnolia, the Mule Riders, which, by the way, I have to say that is probably the best mascot in all of college sports. Can we agree on that one?
Well, here's a great story, and here's how Southern Arkansas became famous. Is that it made Jay Leno's top 10 worst mascots of all time. If you can imagine, you know, the banter of conversation that I dealt with in the locker room. I mean, you got these D1 athletes, you know, the Trojans, the Huskies, you know, the Rolling Tide, the Hurricanes, the Seminoles, right? You got all these great players, and they're like, dude, you rode a donkey? And I'm like, yeah, I did, you know, and we arrived at the same destinations, right? So here's the note, you know, is that it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you know where you're going.
This is true. You should never base it off of a mascot, although, you know, it was actually funny. In Louisiana, I interviewed a kid who went to play basketball at Southern Arkansas. So when I went and I saw that's where you went, and I saw the Mule Riders, you should have seen the smile that I had on my face. Because, well, it brought me back, because I remember when I said, dude, you're going to be a mule rider. And he just started laughing.
It was my college experience. I loved it, loved the people there. But I was just the entire time I'm like, this is just a stop. This isn't my destination. I'm here to get my degree, achieve what I came to do, and get the hell out of here. I tell a great story in Pivot to Win that my senior year going into college, my senior year, I wanted to know, like, is the next level really there for me? Like, what do I have to do? There's two conversations I had. One was with this NFL scout, former player. His name is CL. And CL and I had a conversation about what it would take to get me to the next level. It's like, well, you play Division II football. The NFL sees that your level of competition is a little bit lower than Division I. Okay, obviously. He said, if you want to make it to the next level, there's two things you have to do. One, you have to play special teams, right? And I'll say, okay, well, if you're not a starter in the NFL, you play special teams. Okay, no problem. And then two, you got to dominate. Like, you have to, like, when scouts put on the film, like, you have to jump off the screen. Like, you're just the best player on the field. Okay, got it. I called my brother. My brother was at the University of Iowa, and here they were right in their championship years. And they were going to BCS bowls. Kirk Ferentz was the head coach at the time. I mean, they had star players, and a lot of them on that roster went on to play in the NFL as well. Dallas Clark, Robert Gallery, just to name a few. And, here I was. I gave him a buzz. I said, I call him Monster. His name is Monster. It's like, Monster. Monster. It's like, Monster. Ask your coach if I could come out there and train with you guys during the summer. And, long story short, I got the yes. Here I was spending the entire summer on my brother's couch, working out, with their team, but trying to stay out of the way. And what I realized when I got there, here's the meat of the story, right? For young athletes or for anyone trying to achieve better in their own life, is that you have to surround yourself with the people of the level in which you're trying to get to, right? So if you're the smartest person in your circle, you probably need to start hanging out with more other people. If you want to be a better father, a better community leader, then you got to find people who are already doing that and start to hang around them, or even at least have a conversation with them or practice the things that they're doing, right? So how can I achieve greatness, or at this point, know what the next level is that the NFL is coming to get their talent from, if I don't even know if I am NFL material? And what I found out when I got there, I was just as strong, if not stronger. I was just as fast, if not faster. I leave Iowa, go back to Southern Arkansas. My senior year, I'm Division II Player of the Year on a national level, All-American, and I had a chance to work out in front of 18 teams. There's something there, Collin. When you hear me what I'm saying, I'll say it again. If you want to reach this new level in whatever part of your life, in your career, in your community impact, in your spirituality, in your finances, find people who are already there and doing what you want to do, and start to reach out to them, develop some of the habits that they have, and get in that new circle. I'm telling you, it works.
It's amazing when you tell that story, and I remember reading it in the book, because my first thought is he's sleeping on his brother's couch in Iowa for the summer. But again, you're surrounded by, I mean, you named some top-notch athletes, Dallas Clark, Robert Gallery, big name guys, and you're literally, the confidence that you had going back was probably insane, and obviously got you to the point where you ended up signing with the Seattle Seahawks as an undrafted free agent and carved out a fantastic, very long NFL career. The moment that Seattle came into play and you signed that NFL contract, Jordan, what was that feeling like for you, given losing your dad at a young age, being in a place like Port Arthur, and everything that you've gone through?
I wasn't satisfied. Clearly, I was not satisfied. The team had just drafted a first-round cornerback the year before and a second-round safety. The year I came in and signed as an undrafted free agent, they signed a second-round safety. They drafted a second-round safety. And, the team had no investment in me. To them, I was just a camp body, as they would say, right? I mean, you're there to relieve the veterans of having, too much physical, too much practice, like save their legs, right? So they're not out there physically beating themselves up. It's like, hell no, I'm not. Like, I'm here to stay. I don't know who the hell got to move, but it ain't me. And it was just this attitude and approach of belonging. And again, I go back to this self-talk, or the power of the brain and in the mind, and what we tell ourselves is that, well, if you think it, as a man think it, then so shall he be, right? I mean, I knew that this was my place. Now, I was willing to work for it, no problem, but I mean, there's some other things that comes with it, but I think it started with that. It was just a matter of, putting a stake in the ground and saying, whatever it takes, this is what I want for myself. And I'll be damned if someone else define what that is for me. Not if I got something to say about it.
See, I love the tenacity though, Jordan, because a lot of people think you get drafted, you get signed, that's it. But that's you're not even scratching the surface as an athlete, right? You're a competitor, and the fun is just beginning in that moment. Great, you sign it, you get your contract. That's the forward. That's not even chapter 1 of the book.
Yeah, yeah, and signed a lofty signing bonus with that as well, $5,000.
I love the tenacity, man. I love people that have that mentality where it's always striving for more. But to play devil's advocate for you, and I'm not just necessarily speaking about football, do you think that having that, being that way nonstop, could also be a detriment in the sense of where it's never good enough, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. And you know what? It's a two-edged sword. It really is, right? Because even so, I guess in saying that, this drive and this level of competition is essentially a double-edged sword, because you have this willingness to always seek better, seek better. There's always new levels to hit, but it's as if once you hit it or become that, it's like, well, the chase starts all over again. I think in the clarity behind that is identifying what that end goal is, or who that person is that you desire to be, or what it is that you want to accomplish. At what level is good enough to merit. Is happiness, having a family, owning your house, being debt free, and having a nice job. Well, there's people who have that and still unhappy, right? Because they're always on this constant search for better. And again, we're all experiencing that, because I mean, there are a few things more that we want in life. And certainly for me, I know I'm always looking for greater contribution. I'm always looking to expand my impact. I'm always looking to help other people. I also think that's just a part of who I am. Like, at the core of who I am, it's always a search for what can I do to help someone else. And so you have to be cautious of that, right? Because, the quest of this chase of what we want, there's this adverse effect of who we're becoming in the process. And it's dangerous, right? Because we can be addicted to the wrong things in the pursuit of something that we want that could have a negative effect on us that maybe we don't even realize is happening until devastation hits us and it's too late. And so, yeah, there's a balance, certainly, Collin, and you have to find that. It's different for everyone else. It's different for everyone. But there's also some realizations that I think in finding that time to identify and get clarity around, your own personal values, what success is to you, would help, I guess, kind of bottle that in a more controlled way and give us more of those other areas that we desired, the happiness, fulfillment. So yeah, again, I guess hopefully that answers your question, but again, it can work against you.
I only wanted to bring that point up just going off of my own personal experiences, because again, like the tenacity, always striving for more. I freaking love that, because how else are you going to expect to have success if you just go and saying, I signed with the Seahawks as an undrafted free agent, I'm just going to be that body to relieve those veterans, and that's it. I mean, God, that'd be a horrible mindset to have. And with that mindset, you're not going to play with the Seahawks from 2004 to 2010 and then go to Tennessee after that.
or achieve anything else in life. It's I guess I almost think that's what life is, right? I mean, life is this constant quest of the chase. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, when you see or hear about, people who retire after 40 years in the workplace suddenly deteriorate fast in life, is that they lost the chase. And there's, it, I don't know. I think there's something that works against that. I think that's just what life is. It's a constant quest of learning and figuring things out. And, once we, put it in cruise control, or, coast, or retire, or find no value in the things that we're doing anymore, health declines, finances dwindle, relationships deteriorate, right? So it's just, I don't know. I think that's just what life is. Look, I'm an amateur at this thing. I'm only 38 years old. I don't have life figured out, right?
I'm following your lead, dude. I did want to bring up this statistic, because once you transitioned away from football, 78% of NFL players are bankrupt or under financial distress within 2 years of leaving the league. How did you not become one of those statistics when you pivoted away from the NFL?
Yeah, staggering statistic to read that. And you know, it's kind of like, once you become a parent, you kind of have this new scope, or new position, this new stance to try to lead this young child, and the experiences that you've had, you share, right? It's like, well, don't touch that stove. It's too hot. It's going to hurt you. And the child touched the stove. It's like, well, I try to tell you, but, if you don't know or try those things, is that, well, next time I know, if I see the red light on the stove or see fire, I'm not going to touch that, right? It's like they're learnings along the way. I don't think we, in general, as people, look at the people who've come before us and learn from them more than we are willing to risk and do those things in learning for our own self. Now, there are some are different. Some are more conservative. Some take the stance and have a different, approach to lifestyle and how they're spending their money. And certainly with the way things have progressed, in our world from a technology standpoint, it's that, well, everything's accessible. The ability to build a brand now is just like, I won't say easy, but it's easier than it was 15 years ago. And, the advancements that we've made is that, like, professional athletes should, they're better positioned to have success in other areas as, the previous decade, or older athletes. And again, as it should be. I'm not saying that it shouldn't. I'm saying that's how it should be. So I look at this. Pivots are opportunities to grow, both personally, spiritually, professionally, emotionally. And, certainly was the catalyst for me in my discomfort of moving away from the NFL. Look, after nearly a decade in the NFL, like, I almost felt like a failure. It's like, wow, I feel like I could still play. I'm not wanted anymore. I was fired, not once, twice. And I still had this passion and drive to go out and play. And I was training for year 10 to go back into the NFL. Now, there's one thing about being an athlete, is that we all will be former athletes at some point, right? And but more times than not, is that the team will, separate, or separate from the player faster than, or before the player is willing to let go of that identity. And I think that identity is what kind of captured me into feeling like, okay, now I got to go try something new. I'm back to being a rookie again, in whatever that is, whatever that new space is. But I'm also going through these psychological roller coaster of emotions, and really having to do some reflection on understanding who I am, when for so long I've essentially been defined or used to a certain way of doing things. And it's like that for all of us. I mean, whether you spend 20 years at a company and suddenly the company goes under, or, leadership change, or you're fired, or you start a new relationship, or spouse goes through a divorce, or move to a new city, right? There's this level of familiarity that we have that, that we're comfortable in. We're still thriving. And then there's this new space that we're pivoting into, and have to find a new routine and what that looks like. Again, I think those are growth opportunities, but there's also areas and opportunities to really find what your ground zero is. And I talk about ground zero in the middle of a pivot, is that this place where we need to better understand. I mean, it's just the reflection stage. I need to understand, like, what makes me tick, like what makes me get up in the morning and feel motivated to go out and do something. And if we've been used to it for so long, then it is easily develop a routine, or kind of take things for granted, or, in that sense, kind of be comfortable with what that is. But it also can stunt our growth, right? And so this level of discomfort became the catalyst for growth for me. But it was certainly some challenges that I had to work around and navigate. But again, it was very revealing to better understand me. So I kind of have that same challenge to all of us as we're in the middle of this pandemic, and many people have been furloughed or laid off, and job losses and changes, and now here we are looking at what life is post COVID. Certainly different than what it was a year ago.
The inspiration behind the book, Jordan, your brand new book, Pivot to Win, what made you decide to take all of the life experiences, the ups and the downs, and write this book to better help other people and businesses? We're not even talking just people, businesses, former athletes, the whole deal.
Yeah. So the underpinning of the book, Pivot to Win, is really at the core of who I am, right? I want to help other people. Earlier, I mentioned that in working, or in the pursuit of, chasing greatness and becoming a professional athlete, I never really stopped and paused to look back at where I come from. I mean, I did, but it's like, yeah, but I'm always still looking forward, right? It's like, okay, well, how can I develop the skill, the new skill, and hone in on, learn more about my craft. I mean, look, life is a constant quest of learning, right? So, and I would share the story with many people, and they would just be fascinated, with that story. So, Pivot to Win is essentially, it comprises 30 years of life experiences, growing up in Port Arthur, surrounded by economic ruins, and making it to the NFL after a Division II college football career, being a Black man in America, growing up with discrimination and racism, and then sharing the vulnerabilities of pivoting away from the NFL when I knew I didn't have things figured out. And it's really what most professional athletes kind of go through. It's like, what is this new identity of me? And there's again, I mentioned the mental health component of having to redefine what success looks like. For me, it was no longer putting on a jersey, making big plays, or tackling Tony Romo before running into the end zone, right? Right, and so you got to kind of have that real fierce conversation with yourself. And so, a lot of these stories I share in the book, and my ultimate goal is to empower and elevate other people, both personally and professionally, to reach their greatest potential.
The one thing, Jordan, that really stood out to me right off the top, beginning of the book, your mom actually wrote the first portion of the book, and I know your mom recently passed away. And how has your mom shaped you? And when you think about the relationship over the years, what did you learn from her?
It's been a really tough 3 months, of dealing with the loss of, my mom. And, here we are. I, like 500,000 other U.S. families, have had to bury a loved one due to the pandemic, due to this virus. And, I think this is also an opportunity, Collin, to share my gratitude for our healthcare workers who, when your loved one is alone and their bedside nurse is the only medium for you to have a connection, and using, the hospital's iPad to have visibility or get into that, sick unit, that sick ward. I really had a chance to understand, what our healthcare workers were going through, and have repeatedly been the only person present after the transition of someone's family member. And they're brave for that. And I'm incredibly thankful, for not just, the care team that took care of my mom, but I know 500,000 other Americans can relate to and feel the same way, about the bravery of our healthcare workers. So I really wanted to share that and express that level of gratitude, and recognize them for their leadership, being on the front line for over a year now. I think the one thing about my mom, I mean, there are a few things that sticks out. Obviously, incredibly grateful for being raised in those early values of childhood, of, that early form of developing spirituality, helping other people, and this relentless pursuit in education, really set me on the path to achieve the things that I wanted to. And here she was at, 30 years ago, faced with the biggest pivot of her life. And, certainly as a child, I mentioned as a youngest, I watched all my older siblings, do the things that that they did before I could, that created the path for me, but also watch my mom, navigate this in a way where, I mean, we, resources were scarce, and how she did it, I can't fathom, what that, was, when I know myself and my brother was eating everything before it even got in the house. I mean, we come out of the grocery store, we're eating in the car, bags of chips or whatever it is, snacks, Little Debbie cookie snacks, whatever it was, and couldn't keep the food in the house. But I think the incredible thing too is also seeing in other people this level of resilience, to the point where it actually gives you the courage, and the ability to take this wild pursuit of achieving something wild, as making it to the NFL, or starting your own business, or, these crazy dreams that, when the only way that we can pursue it is if we see it visible in someone else. That's what I saw in my mom. And everything that her footprint, her fingerprint, her touch is all throughout the book. I would strongly encourage, while those who are reading the book, look at it through that lens, because here I was enrolled in my MBA school, writing a book. And when my mom came to Seattle, I was being awarded, by the United Negro College Fund, for this community award. She came here, packed her bags for a week, and stayed 6 months. And it was, I hadn't had that chance to spend time with her since leaving high school. And when we did get her back to Texas safely, 3 months later, she passed. So it's been powerful. It really has. And my hope is that in being able to connect with other families who've experienced this, can look at this pandemic through a different lens of, yeah, I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of working from home. Kids are getting on my nerves. Can we just get back to some level of normalcy? But I think the power of that is taking this new position of where we are post-pandemic, and using it for, some level of power, some level of influence, some greater level of impact, and some higher level of achievement for the things that we want for our lives and for our families, because life in itself is just too precious for us to not achieve our greatest. And And I think that's the challenge. That's where I am right now, Collin. I'm mourning, and I am incredibly passionate about the next wave, the next chapter of life.
Everything you said is very beautiful in the way that you've, I mean, again, having the time, the 6 months, it's all about perspective, right? You were able to have 1 week turn into 6 months to spend with your mom as an adult, which is, it's almost like spending it with a friend. I think a lot of people fail to realize that, like, it's not mother and son, it's like hanging out with your best friend. And the even more beautiful part that tugs on my heartstrings is the fact that you dedicated the book to her, and that her footprint is there, and that's a very special thing, Jordan.
I mentioned writing the book while enrolled in MBA school, and had I had a chance to pick the timing, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I'd already started the book in 2019 before I was accepted into the program. But the timing of it was just divine, and for that, to be able to have that time, and my mother, the chance to lay down some of those bags in which I know she carried for so long. It was for that matter, writing Pivot to Win is incredibly gratifying.
Jordan Babineaux, everybody. He's a man of many hats, former NFL defensive back, an analyst, a host, a speaker, the author of the book Pivot to Win. Pivottowin.com to check it out. Jordan Babineaux on Twitter and Instagram. Jordan, how else can people get in touch with you and learn more about you and the book and order the book?
Yeah, so on the website Pivot to Win, you can log on right now, get a free chapter download. And you can also purchase it on Amazon. And for business leaders and community leaders and others who want to share the gift with other people, there are like discounts on bulk orders of 5 packs, 10 packs, 30 packs. Again, the goal is to empower and create a better way for people to understand how to navigate change, because change is constant, it's consistent, but growth is optional. My hope is that our listeners and our viewers can take that one idea and apply it to their life.